Perhaps the most recognizable creature from the entire series, the Peepers are those cute little fishes we see in the starting zones of the Subnautica games, near coral reefs. They're a welcome addition to a world that is filled to the brim with creepy and disturbing monsters, and serve as a playful escape from the horrors we find in deeper waters. But these happy-go-lucky fish may actually be hiding a secret. You see, as any Subnautica veterans know, as you start to venture into deeper and less explored zones, you begin to encounter leviathans, or massive underwater monsters that will attack and slaughter you at a moment's notice. Shortly after the initial release of Subnautica, however, rumors started to swirl that some players were encountering a different kind of leviathan deep in the lava zone, none other than a massive and aggressive Peeper? Many in the community have since tried to hunt down this ancient beast, but to no avail, and even after searching the game files, there's no such reference to the monster. So it looks like the Peeper Leviathan is nothing more than a myth and April Fool's joke, but there are some signs pointing to the idea that it may actually not be so far-fetched. Like some very old and early Subnautica concept art that seems to depict Peeper-like creatures with a much more massive scope. Could it be one of our greatest sources of food in the games is actually hiding a massive secret, one that would see us becoming the food instead? Potentially there was an idea to put it into the game at some point, but it was cut out. After all, the Peepers in the series do play a huge role. Either way though, to this day, many are still out in the deepest waters of Subnautica searching for the great Peeper Leviathans. And in fact, there's even a host of mods available online today to the community that can make this dream come true. While we have all grown to love the home planet of Subnautica's 4546b, with all its weird creatures and underground caves, a lot of players in the community are still wondering what Earth in Subnautica is actually like. We know Subnautica takes place far into the future with faster than light travel, multiple new alien species discovered, and massive organizations that span multiple star systems. But in all of this, there's basically no mention of Earth in any of the game's lore, and considering we play as humans, you would think our natural birthplace in the stars would play a bigger role. Well, the reason for its absence may be more sad than you thought. If we take a look at the radiation suit description in-game, at the very end of the logs there's a tag phrase, "A necessary precaution in a post-MAD world." For those that don't know, MAD is actually an acronym for Mutually Assured Destruction, and was a big talking point during the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, when fears of nuclear winter and the end of Earth as we know it were high. Considering we find this phrase on the radiation suit specifically, it seems quite likely that Earth in Subnautica actually fell during an all-out nuclear war. On top of this, in the Cuttlefish PDA entry in-game, at one point it is noted that, as observed in Earth's dolphins before their extinction. This once again lends credence to the idea that Earth has been obliterated, but the most damning evidence of all actually comes from an Altera PDA entry we find in-game as well. During the expansion, Altera supplied arms to all sides, acquiring and housing a vast colonist workforce, and making the transition from manufacturer to corporate state. Altera's threat to cease trade was one of the turning points in the conflict, bringing about the end of hostilities and signing of the charter. Based on this evidence, it seems clear that the fate of Earth in Subnautica is less than stellar. In fact, I tried to find more evidence of this based on the natural selection lore as well, considering they take place in the same universe, but I wasn't able to find anything. So if any of you guys know anything about that universe, feel free to comment down below. Probably my favorite aspect of Subnautica is actually the environments. Stumbling into a new zone full of fantastical creatures and plant life never gets old, especially when it's something we've never seen before. From the Lost River to the lava zones and lakes to the grassy plateau, Subnautica is filled to the brim with many great locations like this. And while everyone that has played the games has a zone they think is best, there may actually be another hidden zone no one knows about. In early 2022, a small correction was made to the Subnautica wiki that mentioned a small area underneath the lava zone. There is an unidentified area below the inactive lava zone accessed by a small hole or drop-off. It extends from 1,300 to 1,600 meters in depth, and small holes and drop-offs extending down to about 1,700 meters. It looks like a completely barren version of the safe shallows with no flora or fauna. This update quickly caught traction amongst a very small group of Subnautica players on the subreddit, and they began to look for this entrance to a brave new zone. Sadly though, no one was able to find anything that actually led to a new area, But some players discovered that when looking at the interactive map more closely, there seemed to be two holes in the inactive lava zone that led to something other than the lava lakes. In fact, some players were able to even glitch through some of the game's terrain around these two conspicuous holes and discovered what looked like many unused assets and sounds, potentially for a large biome that was cut from the game at some point. We already know from developer interviews and discussions that there was a lot of cut content in the lava zones, including lava sinkholes, lava bridges, and collapsing spires. So could it be that there was a long lost forgotten zone, even deeper in the inactive lava zone, that's hiding more secrets to this game? The origins of the precursors in Subnautica still remain largely a mystery to this day. It's assumed by many that the beings are nothing more than a long-lost civilization that used to rule the stars. After all, the word precursor itself means a person or thing that comes before another of the same kind. But wait, that's just it. If the precursors are the predecessors of something similar, then what is that similar thing? Well, based on everything we've seen in Subnautica this far, that something is most likely humans. After all, in-game we know from visions that precursors have similar colored vision to us, and on top of this, there are many ancient human weapons and artifacts and art we see inside of their structures. In fact, based on the small amount of precursor language we do see in-game, it seems to actually be heavily influenced by ancient Hindu texts. The fact that our PDA can translate some of their words with what seems to be no struggle at all also further backs up this idea even more. But if precursors actually are some sort of human beings, then how did they even get here? Well, this is where the theory gets really wild. What if planet 4546b is actually Earth itself, long after the nuclear winter that likely occurred as we discussed earlier on this list? Most of humanity would have left the planet in search of other star systems, and these humans would have become the ones we know and love today in Subnautica, being led by massive transgov organizations like Altera and the Mongolian independent states. What about the humans that stayed on Earth though, and the ones that weren't lucky enough to leave? Could these be the actual original humans from Earth, the precursors for humanity as we know it today? Potentially these humans could have evolved down a different path and become the precursors themselves, but that begs the question, how would humans on a post-apocalyptic Earth become so much more advanced than humans that were able to get away? Well, maybe it's because the precursors are actually those same Earth humans from the future. That would also explain how planet 4546b could be Earth, as over countless years another moon could have come into contact with the planet's orbit, and that could have caused sea levels to rise dramatically, hence why the world of Subnautica is almost entirely covered in water. Potentially the precursors are nothing more than the original human race, far into the future, and they are trying to travel back in time to the original outbreak of the Kharaa to stop it. And as part of that mission, they are trying to send signals back to the other sect of humanity that originally left Earth in order to help stop the end of the universe as we know it. Maybe by taking the Altera PDA with us through the portal to the precursors at the end of Subnautica Below Zero, we are actually giving old humanity a way to find the more advanced new breed. If we take this all into account, that would mean that Subnautica is actually an intense and deep science fiction epic about a hyper-futuristic humanity that must travel back in time to alert another sect of humanity that has evolved in their own way about the biggest danger the galaxy has ever seen in an attempt to lead the human race to salvation. Or it's a game about cute little underwater fish. Don't ruin this for me. The Kharaa bacterium is the biggest threat we face in all of Subnautica, no questions asked. But what if this seemingly deadly virus was actually the hero of the entire story, and was our true salvation all along? You see, in ancient Greece, Kharaa was actually a popular girl's name, and also signified purity and righteousness. And on top of this, in ancient Puranic cultures, which went on to heavily influence modern Hindu culture, which is used a lot in Subnautica in different texts, there was a famous story of a young woman named Kharaa, who was a fierce fighter. Kharaa was betrayed by her friends and family who were hell-bent on setting the world on a path to burn and crumble. And in order to retaliate and save the purity of the world, she donned her bow and set forth against them, vanquishing them all along with an army of powerful giants. Could it be that the Kharaa bacterium in Subnautica is a reference to this? Because if it is, that would heavily imply that the Kharaa virus is actually a force for good against a world that is hell-bent on destroying itself. We already know too that Subnautica has lots of different themes of ecological disaster and the importance of caring for the environment. So what if the reason for this is because humanity far into the future, via the help of trans governments, is slowly bleeding the universe of its resources and killing it? Could it be that the Kharaa is actually a natural reaction from nature to fight back against these aggressors? Maybe the Kharaa and the trillions of lives it will take are actually the only way to save the galaxy in the long term. It's certainly a theme we've seen in a lot of other sci-fi as of late. Or maybe I'm just making up bullshit because we're at the end of Tier 4. Like and subscribe.